just Seattle is not a place I want to live. Rains too much. Highest suicide rate in the country. All right, I'll let Alaska Air come up here and talk about the case, and we'll continue from there.
Should bring my laptop. Okay. So there's no space in the back here.
You want to hook up? You could just take out if you want to hook up the. You just pull mine out. Yep. Anybody going anywhere for spring break? They're gonna go. To where?
Florida?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I think it's like right like where Orlando is, but then like if you went to the right, that's like around like this it's like, I forgot the name.
That's close to Orlando.
Yeah.
Nobody else? Going anywhere? Where you going?
Going to Nashville.
Nashville? You been there before? If you got time, you could go over to the mountains, to the Appalachian Mountains. Right there, like 45 minutes away. And where are you going?
Florida.
What part? Anybody else? I'm gonna go to Dubai and then over to, so I got a few destinations. So it'll probably be, Dubai is for sure already set. So it'll be Dubai, Jerusalem, the pyramids in Cairo, and then over to Israel. I try to do that over the entire break, so a couple of days in each. So I'll bring some video back because I'm supposed to skydive over the ponds in Dubai. I'm do a skydive in sort of the desert, doing bubbles out there. So I'll bring some footage back.
So I have my slides on my computer. I don't know how exactly.
Oh, is it not connected?
It doesn't seem like it, no.
Okay. do this, email it to me real quick. Yeah, just email it to me and I'll put it. You sent it? You want my clicker?
I think Nick said he can click on it.
Alright.
Okay, so for my case presentation for this week, me and Nick, we looked at the Alaska Air Group. Some basic information about Alaska Air. Alaska Air Group is an airline or a group of airlines based out of the United States, with headquarters in Seattle, Washington. Right now they own two airlines, Alaska Air, which is their main carrier, and then Horizon Air, which is a regional carrier that they also use. And Alaska Air also fully owns the ground handling company, McGee Air Services, which is named after their founder, Lance McGee. In 2016, Alaska Air acquired Virgin America, and they allowed it to operate under the same name, Virgin America, until April of 2018, where they merged together into the basic Alaska Airlines airline that we know today. So again, some more basic information. The company was formed in 1985 by Lance McGee, and their current CEO has been in control since early 2021. The company saw revenue this past year over $9 billion and reported a net income of $478 million in 2020. So Alaska Air Group is part of the transportation industry, which of course includes like taxi services, any kind of airlines, basically anything that's going to take you from point A to point B. And they organize and execute flights to many of the larger airports in the United States, and they have also started to serve international flights to certain destinations like Canada, Mexico, and other South American countries. I think Belize and Brazil are two of the places that they take flights to. So that top picture shows you the some of the airlines they fly to. I know it's kind of hard to see, but the blue dots are the main ones that they fly out of, or where their headquarters per se are, since of course it's Alaska Airlines or Alaska Air. And the gray dots are all of the different airports that they fly to. So you can see that it's a lot of airports in major cities. You got Washington, you got some in California, a couple different ones in Mexico, Florida. That gray dot near Illinois, that's Chicago, O'Hare. You got one in Virginia, Georgia. So they fly to a lot of the big airports, the big cities throughout the U.S. And of course, their largest competitors in their section of the industry, not the transportation industry as a whole, but as like an airline, their main competitors are JetBlue, American Airlines, Southwest, Delta, which some of the logos are here. Of course, there are other public airlines operating out of the United States that offer both domestic and international flights. So, of course, you could say like, oh, it's Alaska Air, like they might not like be competitors exactly because they fly out of a different area, but because of the fact that they still fly out of most of the like continental mainland United States, these are still their main competitors. And on my next slide, you can basically see this is just another look at their competition, showing that all the different airlines they're basically competing with. So you can see American, Southwest, Delta, United. Those are like the main airlines that everyone really uses when they fly. So that's why it might be a little bit farther off in terms of their revenue passenger miles, but Alaska Air is still right behind them, and they're competing well with the other smaller airlines that people might use from time to time. So they're still in competition, of course, in the total of the transportation and airline industry, even though they might not be as close as or as large as some of those bigger airlines that purchases. So this is my part of my pestle analysis. So for the first leg, the political factors. So politics holds a large impact on the airline group, since the company not only flies inside the U.S. domestically, but also to other countries. So factors like military tension between countries, any kind of government corruption inside the U.S., the craziness of bureaucracy and any kind of government interference, contract enforcement from other countries, taxation, tariffs, wage legislation, basically everything that the government controls and regulates over the entire country, or any kind of agreements they have with the other countries that Alaska Air might be flying to and from. It can all have a large impact on whether or not they'll really be able to get off the ground and continue to fly for an extended period of time. Economic, the overall state of the economy, of course, will impact all companies and all markets in general, but specifically, of course, Alaska Air, it holds a large impact based on their health and their growth as a company, as well as the state of the market of the industry of transportation and the competition with it. So, like infrastructure of the transportation industry, the rate of inflation, interest rates, exchange rates with foreign countries, of course, because currency isn't the same from country to country. Money is different, or not money is different. Money is, of course, universal, but the rate and the worth of money, the value from country to country is different. The skill of the workforce in each of these countries that they're flying to, the type of economy and the income levels in the area, some other factors you can think of economically, especially with the transportation industry. In recent years, like with the threat of COVID and other pandemics and stuff like that, of course, those directly affect the transportation industry because people might not be flying as much when something like that's happening. For social, the culture of society impacts the environment of each organization and plays a large role in marketing and advertising to the customers. So demographics of the population, cultural taboos, education levels, power in each given community, the hierarchy of society, and then leisure interests and abilities of certain communities. All those affect directly with the airline, and so it's a little more fragile because, of course, like, plane tickets are expensive. Like traveling is expensive because it's not just like getting a plane ticket to go somewhere. It's buying a hotel if you want to stay there, getting transportation to and from wherever you're going to stay, to drive around. Because, of course, if you get a hotel, you're not just going to sit there for the entire time, like sightseeing, all that stuff. Those hold a large impact, and basically that relates to a lot of the other factors or the other legs of the analysis, but it's also really important to the social factors because, of course, some people, certain demographics, certain communities might find those exact like parts of transportation more important than others. Like some may value nature more, so they like sightseeing. Some may value just staying around family, so of course they might not need to transport as much. So it really just depends. Social factors, they hold a large impact, or maybe not as large an impact as economic or something like that, but it's still an important part of the analysis. And the last three legs, so technological factors, stuff like developments of competitors. So a lot of airlines have apps and they streamline their transaction processes. All of the impacts of technology on cost, especially with an airplane. Just the advancement of technology, of course, holds a large impact on industry as a whole, and of course the airline industry in Alaska Air is not foreign to that. It of course affects them too. The world's always evolving, technology is always transforming. Everyone's always trying to take those next steps in order to make themselves better and have their company grow. The environment, of course, has a large impact on transportation, not just weather, but also on pollution and emissions, the different climates, the location of travel. Of course, those are important things that a pilot has to think about. The company as a whole has to think about that in different areas. So, of course, climate change across the world, air pollution regulation, renewable energy, all of that stuff, because it just, like, how you operate, it'll change, and then how maybe you fuel your plane, it'll be different because the emissions giving off from a certain type of gas, or whether you're going to a certain country that maybe not have the kind of fuel that you need, stuff like that. legal and the regulations and laws hold one of the biggest impacts on any industry because it sets the rules for what a company can and can't do. So patents, copyright laws, data protection, health regulations, protecting your customers, anything related to other external factors, any laws that kind of overarch over the environmental, the technological, political, anything like that, and the employment laws for the workers that you employ, those of course big impacts on any industry as well, of course, last year. So for my takeaways from this first part of my research, despite operating outside the mainland of the United States, Alaska Air is still able to generate some stable revenue income. Of course, like I said, it may not be as high as some of those other companies, as the big four per se, you could say, of airlines, but they're still able to hold themselves or generate enough revenue to still be profitable as well. Like I said, same thing, but they might not be able to compete with the bigger airlines. They market themselves as a premier airline from Alaska to go along with their ability to fly to international destinations. So, of course, like with marketing, every airline might be able to fly to Anchorage or one of the bigger cities in Alaska, but Alaska Air, of course, they've got different locations spread throughout Alaska, so and they're near Alaska Air, so they can market to that specific group, as well as marketing to all the other areas around the U.S. that they fly to. The group has continued to evolve and stay relevant by upgrading their processes, evolving technology, and purchasing other airlines to encourage growth. So like I said, they bought Horizon Air, they bought Virgin America, so they're still expanding, not just basically staying in one location, like they can just say, oh, we're just Alaska, we're just gonna stay in Alaska, we're gonna fly in now. They're working, so they're basically, they're growing as a company, buying other airlines, and like I said, continuing to grow. And then lastly, after seeing nearly a 60% drop in sales in 2020, and of course with COVID-19, like I said, transportation industry as a whole took a hit. They've since increased back to stable revenue. I think I read that they took about, I think it was over $10 million, might be more, in lost revenue, basically from of course COVID-19 during that 2020 period. But they've of course got their revenue back up stable as well as their net income, and they've recovered and are back to seeing profit.
Questions? We got one person who took Alaska Air. Do you remember anything from it? So let me ask you, from your research, what do you think is like the core competency of Alaska Air? Like, is it the fact they primarily focus on Pacific Northwest and Alaska? Are the airlines themselves, the actual planes, are they like have a lot of entertainment? Is it cheap cost to fly? Like, what do you think it is that primarily they sell?
They do try to organize cheap flights a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They try to keep them cheap, and then they also they're really dominant on the West Coast because they have a lot of hubs. I was reading about they have a lot of hubs that allows them to go just to do nonstop flights from Alaska or from anywhere on the West Coast, and can help instead of adding stops, which some people may like, not having to stop at the place and wait to get back on.
So non-stop flights to Pacific Northwest, West Coast, and Alaska.
Yeah.
That's sort of the main focus.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. Of course, operating mostly out of their headquarters being in Seattle, mostly out of Alaska. They cater a lot to the Pacific Northwest, the West Coast, things like that. Of course, they've expanded recently to more East Coast airports, but like you said, their core competency is being able to cater to those people who might not be in like the best region of flight, like the Seattle's, the Anchorage. They had a airport on the far east side of, or far west side, excuse me, of Canada. So they're able to cater to some unorthodox locations, you could say, but they're still, of course, able to keep their flight costs low. I mean, shoot, after doing a lot of research on my computer, literally today, I got like one of the little ads saying like what was Alaska Air getting a discounted flight. So yeah.
What do you think they'll gain from buying out, say, like Virgin or some of those other?
Well, it's kind of so they're of course, buying out their fleets so you can get on their not airports, just they'll get on their planes so that they have more planes available to cater to their customers. And then also, of course, you get maybe the expanded reach of like reaching more parts of the country, of flying out maybe a better airport. Because of course, if someone wants to travel to South America, like Belize or something like that, like I said, they're not going to want to fly out of Anchorage, Alaska. If they want to take non-stop flight now, they're able to fly out of one of those airports that are like more susceptible and more easier for them to have a organized flight instead of like bouncing back and forth and everything like that. So as they continue to expand and they're more accessible to more customers with lower flights, of course, everybody wants to fly the cheapest flight, the quickest flight to their certain location. So with them continuing to expand, it will just help expand their customer base.
Excellent. Great job, you guys. I don't have any more questions. Anyone else? No?
Well, Nick actually had he has
I have
questions 3 and 4. That was
Oh, okay.
two.
Thank you.
I started talking about what mine was about. I was like, all right, these are like some of the questions that I was gonna answer.
Yeah.
So,
It's yours and the, oh, you sent
Yeah,
me
I
yours
sent
and
it
the.
too. you just answered some of my questions in my slides.
Yeah.
So I had the 5 forces model. So the suppliers for Alaska Air was Boeing, and Boeing is a really big. It's like one of the two. The other one that I saw was shoot, what was the other air? Air Max, yeah, Air Max. Yeah, they're the other supplier for for airlines. And in 2026, they had they placed 146 planes on order to help replace the old ones. And they are also trying to become the first fleet that only flies 737s, which would be big for the company, because if something happens with the plane, they can either just swap one out and then they just get another 737, and then which would also help pilots as well, because then they only have to their pilots will only have to learn one plane to fly, which then can also help if they need to fix a plane, because they only need inventory for 737s as well. So it just makes it very flexible to, as a company as a whole, just to have one plane and all. And I would say that they are in their strength for this, that they would be moderate to high, just because of the flexibility that they bring with just having one 737 fleet. So. The buyers, the customers are looking for the cheapest trip. Like we talked about, they said West Coast is their main thing, where they just fly nonstop most of the time. I mean, they do have occasional hubs, like Martin showed, in West Canada, or in Eastern Canada and Western Canada, some in Florida, Chicago. But as you can tell, they were mostly located on the West Coast. This helps out because West Coast, they're allowed to do, a lot of people don't like to take a whole day on flying. So this helps with cheap flights from LA to Seattle or something like that, and just being nonstop. They also do cheap flights or like packages with trip, like vacation places, and also and group deals as well. Yeah, they do group deals and vacation packages as well, which also help booking flights. You can book through there, and you'll find cheaper ways than maybe for Delta or Southwest. They're obviously not. They're the 5th largest airline in the U.S., but they're not one of the biggest, which is hard for them because they might not have. No, yeah, they're moderate in this category because they're not one of the biggest ones. But like for Southwest, they offer only like 2 free bags as well. So it's hard to compete with like some of the bigger ones when they don't really have anything else than vacation specials and group deals. So. Yeah, the competitors, like Martin said, that there are Southwest, Delta, American, and JetBlue. They aren't as big as most of the other ones, but like we talked about, that they have nonstop flights mostly on the West Coast. I would say that they're moderate to low on this section because they're obviously not as big as all the other ones, but they do offer cheap deals for West Coast flights and maybe other flights as well. But I mean, you obviously have to add a stop if you want to probably go from like the West Coast to the East Coast. And with that, that could potentially turn into whole day travels, and people might just end up spending maybe like 50 to 100 bucks more if they can just add it nonstop and try going somewhere else. So that would be kind of hard for people if they want to go with Alaska Air. So. Product substitution, like I talked about, that they want to become a 737 fleet, and this can help out with whatever can happen. They become very flexible, so that like if anything happens to the plane, they may be able to just swap one out with one that's already at one of their hubs, and then they don't have to like worry about getting another pilot for a different plane or something like that. And then they potentially just end up, or if like a pilot calls off and they have one on standby, then the pilot already knows what plane he's going to be flying, so that helps out with that, and it just makes things a lot more smoother, and it makes the customers more happy. I mean, obviously, if something happens to the plane, you're not going to be happy because you're going to get delayed, but you'll still end up having to get to your destination without maybe more time adding on if you had to switch out a plane, use a different plane, call a different pilot, whereas pilots already trained just for 737s. It just makes things a lot easier. So, and then potential entrants, I would say that they are pretty good because they, like Martin talked about, they bought out Virgin America, which that helps the company to grow. Like you get their planes, and that just helps out because it allows like they're more on the smaller side, so with that it helps out because they kind of stay on the top of the smaller airlines side, which they eliminate any potential ones that are on the come up, so that just helps out as well. And I would say they are moderate to strong on this because they buy out any potential threats and they try to compete with the top airlines in the country. So, and then a business strategy that I would give to Alaska Air is try to offer their customers, maybe like with Southwest, that they have 2 free bags, maybe try to offer them 1 or something like that, because then that also helps out with costs, because if they're trying to go a flight from the West Coast to the East Coast, this potentially with 1 free bag could become cheaper because of that out of stop, but then whereas opposed to a Delta flight or a American flight, they don't offer free bags, so with that it might become a cheaper option, and then it might end up taking the day trip with just making it a cheaper option, especially with a group deal or if you're going on a vacation. So that would be my one business strategy that I would suggest to them. And that would be all.
Just one more question. Anyone else? No question? All right, so we talked about like resource-based models, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or industrial organizational models. I mean, like, is it the industry that they're in that makes Alaska Airlines attractive, or is it like what they do as an organization with their fleet of planes, or acquiring version, or their destinations they choose? What do you think would be?
I would say it might be a little bit of both. I know that I was kind of comparing some prices when I was looking at them, and they do offer really cheap flights, but the problem with that though is that it obviously adds stops, and then you could possibly have layovers and stuff like that that could be potentially very long. But I don't know, also their technology I would say is pretty good as well with the planes. I just think it just kind of just depends on the person though, that if you want to spend an entire day traveling or just get there as quickly as possible, and then it also comes down to the amount of money that you also want to spend too. So if you're looking for vacation deals though, I would say Alaska Air might be a good one because they offer good deals for vacationing, like for like cruises and stuff like that, or like group deals as well. So
while they're like in the transportation industry, they also have like, of course, like they're updating their technology. So like they have their own app, which a lot of airlines are doing, with like their ability to book on that app, track your rewards, entertainment like is offered so that when you get on the plane, like then United has like their own Wi-Fi. So then when you get on the plane, you log onto the United app. It's got like a bunch of movies and stuff like that in the database. So it's kind of like they're trying to catch up in that sense, where they're trying to upgrade their technology. Of course, everybody wants to upgrade their technology. And they also have some other stuff that they're adding in. I remember when I was researching, I saw something about an Alaska Air credit union. So basically, like the same thing, they're trying to expand so that they are more than just transportation. Like they're trying to become their own separate like brand and brand themselves so that they're reaching into multiple places in order to continue to have growth.
and also with the credit unions and all that, you add credit card potentials, and then that adds miles to flying, and then you get free flights as well. So that's another thing that they're also trying to pick up on. And obviously, when one does it, everybody else follows. It just whoever does it first, though, might benefit you more.
All right, excellent presentation, guys. Awesome. Here's a question: is the airline industry an attractive industry to enter? What are your thoughts? Airline industry?
Sorry, what was the question?
Is it an attractive industry to enter?
I mean, of course, with travel, like everybody, maybe a dream is like, oh, travel the world. Like, I want to be able to take people places, but like we kind of showed, it can be really daunting because of the fact that the top competitors have kind of made a giant stake in the industry as a whole. So it's kind of hard to try to jump into it and hope to make up that headway. But of course, it can still be like enticing, like, hey, I want to show people the world, I want to travel. And then also, like, with that, maybe like you're a pilot or something like that, like they also get to travel like and fly to those places that they're going to. Of course, it's not like they're taking a vacation here and they get to like go fly to Jamaica and then stay in Jamaica for like 2 months. Like that's not how that works. But like it's still like enticing because you get to see other places, maybe not as hands-on as you want, but you still get to go.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? To like start an airline?
I think it would be hard in sense is because you got to build hubs, you have to get the planes. I mean, that's a lot of money and it takes time. And I mean, with that, while you're just getting started, I think like Southwest, Delta, JetBlue, and American are all like, they're already there, and all they have to do is just maybe upgrade things as opposed to building, or like they'll maybe build more hubs or something like that, but they don't have to worry about building hubs at specific airports or something like that because they already have one there, and then they can just upgrade technology or upgrade planes, and it would just be a lot easier for them, and then it'll potentially get bought out maybe or something by another airline. But I mean, if you stay true to it and you believe that you could possibly be one of the better ones, I mean, it's just going to take a lot of time. You're not going to get into it in snap of a finger, but there's the possibility of potentially getting there.
Anybody else?
I'd say overall, I mean, trying to what was said, I think you can make it if you're persistent and smart enough, because again, it's an industry that's always in demand, especially in today's day and age of technology and transportation, but it's an industry that's dominated by large companies already, and there's some things that are hard to get, like for hubs, the gates specifically, because even larger airports can have so many gates, but they can't have enough for every single airline out there. So I guess trying to fight for resources that are more shared.
Yeah. I think it's extremely hard business. There's so many fixed costs. The planes are going to be usually the same, 767, 737, and everybody's gonna have some hardware, right? The fuel cost is going to be essentially the same, right? But just depending on where you're traveling to. Hence why a lot of these we always gotta bail them out. When economies get really bad, we're like, oh, we gotta bail out American, United, right? Because they're gonna lay off a ton of people. Because they're just the top dogs. So what do they have to offer? Credit card, credit, right? A package, travel package, increase the entertainment. Because all of that is variability costs, but they already have so many fixed costs. You don't know how many people are actually gonna get on that plane to go to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, or wherever the case may be. So on that flight, you may take a hit, right? Maybe your other network, you may make a small profit margin. On your other flights, you can't control a flight that's supposed to leave, how many people are gonna book the flight. So it's extremely, extremely hard. That's why American, United, JetBlue, those kind of stay the top dogs. They never really move. And then you'll get, Spirit Airlines and stuff like that. And eventually what happened, those will get bought out too. You're like, well, why are they buying them out? I don't know, they're gonna try a new strategy, right? Different locations, blah, blah, blah. But we just saw that they made, Alaska Airlines, made $9 billion in revenue, but net income, which is profit, 475. People gave you $9 billion, but you only hear 400-something million as profit, right? But it goes to show you, this is one of the industries where you don't make a lot of profit, right? You don't make a huge profit. Something just to keep in mind, like how it all plays out as we talk about sort of core competencies. All right, we'll get into chapter 3. No class on Friday. I have a very, very important conference. So Friday, no class. Just kind of focus on next week. But we'll go over chapter 3 Wednesday. And then I'm going to take attendance at the end of class. Versus, just kind of coming down attendance, make sure everyone's. Any questions? All right, chapter 3, core competencies. What is the best core competency that a company can have? What's the best resource that a company can have? What's the best resource? What kind of? Well, you have the money, right? If you don't have what? The money's not executed in a way that's
People?
yes. Who said people? Right? Human capital is the most greatest resource you could have. If you have intelligent people who can get the job done, you're gonna always increase your business, right? You're gonna have intelligent people with new ideas who not only just come to work and do something, they assess what they do and think of how they can do it better, right? We have competent managers, competent owners. That is how a company grows, right? It's not just about the money. There's a ton of people who, Donald Trump was given from the bank $6-7 billion, right? And maybe a total failure of companies of 200-300 failed companies. It doesn't mean company never made a profit. So you just operate off debt, you never ever make a profit, you can't really say that that's a successful, right? Although other companies he has have been successful. It's not Trump, actually. So core competencies, resources, capabilities, and competitive advantage, right? So we talk about that big word, value. So before we did external analysis, right, looking on the outside, hustle, political, all these other factors, now we're looking on the inside, right? As a company, what can you do well? How can you improve? How do you strategize? How do you observe opportunities and threats? And how do you remain competitive to get a high return rate? Right? So in today's global economy, some of the resources that were traditionally critical to firms' effort to produce and distribute their goods and services are now likely to be the source of competitive advantage. What are some ways that companies are losing their competitive advantage? Like, what is happening now that don't allow people to have a long-term competitive advantage like they used to back then? What's changing? What's shifting?
Technology.
Yes, right? So basically, you can imitate very quickly. Right? With the internet around, you can see what a company is doing very, very quickly and imitate that and replicate it. So it means that a company that's doing something that's got a good market, the companies come behind it. We just talked about with the airlines, they're all going to do the exact same thing once they see that it works, right? From American, from United, what have you. They're going to come ahead and do the same thing. So therefore, American United say, oh, okay, now they've caught up, they've imitated, replicated what we've done. We have to create something new, right? Together. Global mindset, right? So to have a global mindset is the ability to analyze and manage, understand internal organization ways that are not dependent on assumptions of a single country, culture, or context. That's the same could go maybe for Alaska Airlines. Like, how are you just, initially they focus on Alaska and the Pacific Northwest, right? Now they're starting to expand a global mindset and like, hey, we need to look beyond just the borders of America, we need to expand, how can we do that? Well, one thing, you don't want Alaska Airlines taking you to Bolivia. It makes no sense. Because image and brand, what people conceptualize, it's like, why is Alaska Airlines taking me to Egypt? It doesn't make sense, right? So what they'll do is buy out other airlines that have been traveling these places around the world so they can sort of utilize their core competencies, but apply it to the new organizations that they have, right? They've expanded. They expanded using other airlines, not necessarily theirs. Analyzing the firm's internal organization requires that evaluators understand how to leverage the firm's unique bundle of resources. Right? I was going to ask you this, guys, we'll run out of time, but what is your core competency? Right? You're going to be graduating, get out of here soon, graduating in May. So the thing is, looking at businesses are also looking at yourself. What is your core competency? If you have one that you are aware of, or if you have multiple. Anybody has a core competency they are confident to say? All right. Yes?
I'd say organization.
Or organized, right? And that can take you a long way. So the fact that you acknowledge that, you can say, well, I'm not great at all these other things, and I know you want to start a business. But you say, well, how do I utilize my organization skills as a factor to make, my wrestling business extremely successful? Which means it's not going to just involve you. You're organized by having organized very awesome people that, right? So organization back, hey, I'm good at organizing people. I may be able to organize some other stuff. Who else? Who've evaluated and assessed themselves to say, hey, I'm actually got a good core competency of X, Y, Z. I'm pretty sure. But the thing is, you guys are all unique and you do have some sort of core competency. If you don't realize it and leverage it, then you're going to be looking at some other skills you do not have, that you're not good at, right? So just a sense of being reality. Same will apply here. You can't make up skills, right? Eventually they get exposed. So the thing is like, hey, I have this thing, I'm really good at this one particular thing. How do I translate this and be effective once I graduate from Concordia? Instead of making up skills I know I'm not good at. You waste your time. You waste everybody else's time too. Right, so the same applies here, right? Know what you do good. Don't pretend like you do a billion other things good. All right, so we got what, 2 minutes left? Oh. All right, we'll just go in here, right? So core competencies, we got 4 criteria of sustainable advantages. Value, rare, costly to imitate, non-substitute. What are some companies that have these 4 things? They're valuable, they're rare, they're very costly to imitate, non-substitute.
One company might be Rolex, watch company.
Yeah, right? Only one Rolex, right? They got their patent, their look, people can sue them, replicate. And there are a lot of people that try to make bogus stuff, but they have a brand and an image. People are willing to spend a ton of money for it, right? This is rare. There's one Rolex company out there. They're not bought out by the major other groups, watchmakers, buy out those other ones you think are independent. Rolex like the only independent left, right? Costly to imitate, and they're non-substitutable. So watches are very, very hard to sort of replicate if they've been doing it for a long time. I have this one, which is made in Switzerland, which is a Breitling, right? $30,000 watch. And the thing is, this has been bought out, so the value of it probably wasted a lot of money, right? It's got bought out by their parent company, so it's lost its value. Whereas Rolex, they're saying like, no, we're gonna keep in-house, not let nobody else buy us out, because then the watch essentially becomes cheaper, right? The value changes. All right, I will let you guys go and see you